Okay, so I had a client, great guy, moving here from the Bay Area, a software job up at the point in the mountain, and about 3 weeks before closing, he calls me and he's kind of quiet on the phone and he goes, "Scott, can I ask you something kind of awkward?" And I already knew exactly what it was going to be, because 9 times out of 10, when somebody gets quiet like that before a Utah move, it's this one single question. He says, "We're not religious. Are we going to feel like outsiders here in Utah? Like, are people going to treat us differently?" And here's the thing. I've lived here my entire life. I'm going to be honest with you in a way that, frankly, a lot of real estate people won't be, because they're scared of saying the wrong thing. The honest answer is yes and no. There are real things, real specific things that are going to feel different to you. And then there's a whole pile of stuff that people get terrified about that turns out to be completely overblown. And nobody separates the two for you. You go online, you get one of two versions. Either Utah is the oppressive theocracy that you'll never even make a friend in, or it's paradise and anyone who struggles just didn't try hard enough. Both of those things are garbage. The truth is in the middle, and it's way more useful than either one of those two extremes. So that's what this video is. I'm going to walk you through what it actually feels like to live here when you're not a member of the predominant faith of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, or as many call them, the Mormons, which, by the way, is most likely going to be you and is increasingly a lot of your neighbors as well. I'm going to give you 5 realities. Some of them will make you exhale and relax. At least one of them is going to surprise you. And the last one, the 5th one, is the thing that almost every single transplant tells me they wish that somebody had told them before they made the move. And look, full disclosure, I sell real estate here in Utah. I help people relocate to Utah for a living, so you might think I've got an incentive to make this all sound rosy. I'd argue the exact opposite. If I sugarcoat this and you move here and you're miserable, I've got an unhappy client and a bad reputation in a state where word travels really quickly. My whole business depends on you landing in the right spot and actually being happy that you came here. So I'd rather tell you the real version, and with that said, let's get into it. All right, so let's start by killing the biggest myth, because it shapes everything else. The common belief, the thing people say in the relocation forums and the comment sections, is that Utah is overwhelmingly Mormon. Like, you're moving into a place where you'll be one of a tiny handful of outsiders surrounded by a single faith that runs everything in Utah. That's the picture in most people's heads before they get here. But here's the reality, and it's backed by actual numbers, not vibes. Utah is the most religious state in the country by share of population. The Kempsey-Gardner Policy Institute at the University of Utah pegs religious adherence at about 76% of the state of Utah. That part is true, but religious is not the same as Latter-day Saints or Mormons, and the LDS share specifically has been quietly sliding for many, many years and decades. A study published in the Journal of Religion and Demography estimated that the share of Utahns who actually identify as members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is around 42%, markedly lower than the 60%-ish figure that the media used to throw out as recently as about 2020. Now, I want to be careful here because there are a few different ways to count this, and they give you different answers. Church membership rolls count everybody who was ever a member, including people who moved away or stopped attending many, many years ago. So those numbers run really high. Self-identification surveys run much, much lower, and active weekly attending membership is lower still. Verify the exact figure for yourself before you quote it at a dinner party. But the direction is not in dispute. The LDS share of Utah is shrinking. The non-member share is growing, and in big chunks of the state, especially Salt Lake City proper and Salt Lake County. Members of the church are now a plurality, not a majority. So the very first thing I want to reframe for you, you are not some rare exception moving into a monolith. Depending on where you land, you could be in the majority of non-members on your own street. Utah is not becoming less religious overnight, it's becoming more religiously plural. Researchers describe it less as a replacement and more as a diffusion. The church is still the single biggest cultural force in the state by a mile, but it is sharing this social space more than it ever has before. And why does that matter for you specifically? Because almost all of the anxiety that people carry into this move is built on a population number that's a decade out of date. Once you fix the number, the real questions get a lot more practical and a lot less scary. The question stops being, will I be the only one? And becomes, okay, what actually feels different day to day? And where do I want to plant myself? And the truth is, the vast majority of the people moving into the state of Utah are also Christian, they're just of other faiths. So here's my plan for the rest of this video. 5 realities in order. Reality 1 is the social layer, the friend thing, the neighbor thing, the part everyone's actually worried about. Reality number 2 is the practical logistics, Sundays, alcohol, the stuff that hits you in week 1. Reality number 3 is kids and schools, because if you've got a family, this is probably your real question. Reality number 4 is what I call the 2 Utahs, and this is the one where I'm going to save you from the single most common, most expensive mistake that transplants make. And reality number 5 is the surprise, the thing nobody sees coming. So let's start with the one that's keeping you up at night. So let's talk about the thing you're actually scared of, which is friendship and belonging. Here's the real texture of it. In a lot of Utah neighborhoods, the LDS ward, that's the local congregation, functions as the social operating system within a community. It's not just church on Sunday, it's the weeknight activities, the service projects, the casserole when you have a baby, the teenagers who will mow your lawn, the built-in friend group for your kids. For members, that infrastructure is incredible. It's one of the genuinely beautiful things about the culture here. And here's the honest part. If you're not plugged into that system, there can be a layer of community life that's just happening adjacent to you that you're not automatically a part of. That's the real thing. That's not paranoia. New transplants do sometimes describe a feeling of being like 1 degree removed from the default social grid. But here's what nobody tells you. That's a solvable problem, and the solution is the same one that works in literally any new city. You have to build your social grid on purpose instead of inheriting one. The transplants who thrive here, and I've watched dozens and hundreds of them do it, do a few specific things. They get into the rec leagues, the pickleball, the climbing gyms, the trail running groups, because Utah's outdoor culture is genuinely faith neutral and massive. They find the other transplants, and there are a ton of them now, especially through the corridors and the growth zones of the state, because transplants bond hard and fast over being new to the state of Utah. It's something you already have in common. And a lot of them tell me the single best move was just being a warm, normal neighbor, waving, bringing the trash cans up, saying yes to the block party, because here's the thing people get wrong. Your LDS neighbors are, by and large, genuinely lovely and will be absolutely inclusive with you. The friction, when it exists, is usually about social gravity, not rejection. The default activities orbit the ward, they're not pulling up a drawbridge. And so my practical advice, if community matters to you, weight your neighborhood choice toward areas with a high transplant mix. And we'll cover exactly where in reality number 4. And go in as a giver, not a guest. The people who struggle here are usually the ones who showed up expecting to be recruited into a friend group. The people who flourish here are the ones who started the book club themselves, hosted the driveway happy hour, or coached the rec team. And the reason this is reality number 1 is that it's the fear that drives the whole decision, and it's the one that's most fixable. Belonging in Utah is not handed to non-members automatically the way it is to members. That's very true, but it is completely available to anyone willing to be proactive for about 6 months. I'd argue that's true of moving anywhere as an adult, anywhere in the country. Utah just makes the default system a little more visible, so the contrast is sharper. Get this right, and everything else on this list is just logistics. And speaking of logistics, let's talk about the stuff that's going to hit you in literally the first week, before you've made a single friend. The Sunday thing and the alcohol thing. This is where the culture gets practical really fast. Okay, 2 parts of Utah daily life that genuinely feel different to newcomers, and both are way more manageable than the internet makes them sound. First, it's Sundays. In a lot of areas, especially the more heavily LDS suburbs, Sunday's pretty quiet and pretty sleepy. Some local businesses close or run short hours. It's not statewide, and it's not a law, it's a cultural rhythm. In Salt Lake City, you'd barely notice it in many parts of the city, unless it's downtown in the shopping district where those stores or that mall is shut down on Sunday Sundays. In a smaller Utah County town, you'll notice it as well. And second is alcohol. This is the one everyone's heard horror stories about, and the rules genuinely are different from most states because the state itself runs liquor sales. But, and this is important, the rules have been loosening very fast for quite a few years now, and a lot of the scary stuff you've read is already outdated information. So what to actually do about it? On Sundays, just adjust your rhythm. Do your big grocery run on Saturday. Know that the trails and the canyons and the major grocery chains and plenty of restaurants are open. Honestly, a lot of transplants come to love the quiet Sunday feel, and it forces a slower day. Plan around it for 1 month and it becomes visible. On alcohol, let me give you the current lay of the land, and please verify the specifics before you quote me because these laws are changing almost every legislative session. Liquor and wine above a certain strength are sold through state-run stores, through state liquor stores, not your average grocery store. But grocery stores and convenience stores do carry and sell beer. Also, restaurants can absolutely serve you a drink with your meal. The old Zion curtain that partitioned some restaurants had to build so you couldn't watch a drink being poured has been gone for many, many years. And as of 2026, the state actually loosened a bunch of rules. There was a brief experiment requiring an ID check for every single alcohol purchase regardless of age, and the legislature already walked that back, so it mostly applies to people who look 35 years and younger at restaurants plus bars. The trend line is clearly toward normalization and not more restriction. And in reality, you can buy a 6-pack at the grocery store, you can get a cocktail at dinner, you can stock a liquor cabinet, you'll just make an occasional trip to a state-run store for the hard stuff, and you'll carry your ID with you. That's the whole adjustment. It's a mild inconvenience, not a dry county. And here's why I put this second. These logistics are the things that generate the loudest complaints online, but have the smallest actual impact on your daily life once you've adjusted. They're week 1 friction, not year 1 friction. And I want you to mentally file them in the right drawer. Because if you walk in bracing for prohibition and instead find a normal-ish system that's actively getting more normal every year, you've just turned an expectation into a pleasant surprise. That's exactly the dynamic that makes people end up happy that they moved here. Now, if you've got kids, I know what you're really asking, and you've been politely waiting through the beer talk just to get to it. The school question. This is where a lot of families have their deepest hesitation, and there's a lot of nuance here that I want to get right. And real quick, before we get into schools, I keep saying it depends where you live, and I realize that's a little maddening when you're trying to plan from out of state. So I did something about it. I put together a free relocation guide. It breaks down exactly everything that you need to know, which areas have which vibes, the transplant mix, the commute realities, the price ranges, the neighborhood by neighborhood stuff that you really need to know. It's the thing that I wish I could have handed out to every single client on day one. It's totally free. The link's in the description. Grab it, follow along. It'll make the next 3 realities land a lot more concretely for your specific situation. So let's move on and talk about schools. Okay, if you're moving with kids, here's the real dynamic. Utah public schools are, on the whole, solid and good, and they're secular. There's no religion taught in the public school curriculum, but the social fabric of a school reflects the neighborhood around it. In a heavily LDS area, a lot of your kids' classmates will be members of that faith. A chunk of their weeknight social life may run through church youth activities. And there's a specific thing you should know about called release time, where LDS high schoolers can leave campus during the day for religious instruction at a building next to the high school. Your kid wouldn't participate in that scenario, but they'd notice classmates coming and going from that period. The honest concern that parents raise is, will my kid feel left out if they're not part of the dominant group's social calendar? It's a fair question, and I'm not going to wave it away. So what do you actually do about it? Here's how families actually handle it well. First, neighborhood selection matters even more than school ratings here. A higher diversity, higher transplant area means your kid has a built-in cohort of other kids who also aren't part of the ward system. That alone solves most of it. Second, lean into the activities that are faith neutral, which in Utah is a giant list. Club sports, ski teams, robotics, theater, the arts, you name it. Utah kids are outdoors and active constantly, and none of this is religious. Third, and parents tell me this over and over again, talk to your kids early and openly about the fact that they'll be around a lot of people of one faith. Frame it as a feature of an interesting place, not a problem. And kids adapt astonishingly fast. The ones who struggle are usually mirroring a parent's anxiety. society. And one reframe I give every single parent: your kids are going to grow up around people who are statistically very family-oriented, low on a lot of the risk behaviors that you might worry about elsewhere, and generally really kind. That's not nothing. A lot of non-member parents end up genuinely appreciating the environment, even while keeping their own beliefs or not even being a part of a faith at all. And this is reality number 3 because it's the highest stakes decision for the biggest share of you. And it's the one where you live does the most work. You cannot fix a school's social fabric after you've bought the house, but you can choose the fabric on the front end, which is the perfect setup for the next reality because everything I've said so far, the friends, the logistics, the schools, all of it bends dramatically depending on one decision. And most people make that decision blind. So let's make sure that you don't make that decision blindly. This next one is the reality that if you only remember one thing from this entire video, this should be it. I call it the 2 Utahs. Here's the single biggest thing transplants don't understand until they've lived here for a year. Utah as a cultural experience is not one place. The non-member experience in downtown Salt Lake City and the other non-member experience in a frontier suburb 40 minutes south can feel like 2 different states. Same mountains, totally different social weather. And broadly, and I'm painting with a very wide brush here, so verify the specifics for any given neighborhood, Salt Lake City proper and its close-in east side communities like the Avenues, Sugar House, Mill Creek, Holiday, and the Cottonwood Heights areas and the foothills skew more religiously mixed, more politically varied, more transparent heavy, more of what you'd recognize as a normal mid-sized American city. Park City over the mountain is its own world entirely, international, resort-driven, very non-member heavy. Then as you move south or even north into other areas, it's a different experience altogether, and it just depends on the neighborhoods as to where you're looking to plug in to make sure that you fit in best. And when talking about all of this, here's the mistake, and I see it constantly. A family flies in, falls in love with the price per square foot in a brand new frontier subdivision, buys the biggest house they've ever owned, and then realizes 6 months later that they're the only non-member family on a street of young families whose entire social life runs through a ward they're not part of. They optimized for the house and accidentally chose the culture that was the hardest fit for them. And in Utah, the house and the culture are bundled together far more tightly than in most states. So what to do instead? Decide your cultural fit first, then shop for houses inside that filter. If you want maximum religious mix and walkable city energy, you're looking at Salt Lake City and the east side communities, and you'll pay more per square foot. If you want resort and international vibes, it's the Park City side, and it's more expensive. If you're comfortable in a more traditional, more religious community, it might be a little bit further from the city. And it's these family-dense settings where I find that so many non-members are genuinely happy and they feel like it's a wonderful place for them to live. Now, none of these are wrong, but you have to choose it on purpose. The price difference is real, and it's pushing people toward the frontier, which is exactly why you have to go in with your eyes wide open. And this is the reality that ties the whole video together. Friends, logistics, schools, every single one of those gets easier or harder based on which Utah you pick. Choosing your neighborhood here isn't just choosing a commute and a price like it is in most places. You're choosing your daily cultural experience for the next decade. Get this one decision right, and the other 4 basically take care of themselves. Get it wrong, and no amount of effort fully fixes it. This is the entire reason a local who'll be straight with you is worth more here than almost anywhere else in the country. Which is a good moment for one more resource. And then I promised you a surprise at the end, the 5th reality, the one every transplant says they'd wish they'd known. That one's coming, and it is my favorite. And look, I just gave you the whole framework. Decide your cultural fit, then filter neighborhoods, then shop houses inside of that filter. That framework works, but doing it from another state with a map and some Zillow tabs open on your computer is genuinely hard, and a wrong guess here is a 6-figure mistake. So if you want to shortcut all of that, just reach out to us. My team and I are here to be your real estate resource of choice. Get on a call with us, let's start the conversation, and let's guide you along the way to make sure that you're landing in the perfect place for you. And you can find my contact information down in the description below or in the pinned comment on every video. No obligation, no hard sell, just a local telling you the truth. Okay, reality number 5, the surprise that I promised. Here's the one nobody sees coming. Almost every non-member transplant I've worked with arrives braced for the culture to be the hardest part. And then a year or two in tells me the culture was never the real story. The thing that actually defined their Utah experience was something else entirely. How fast it stopped feeling like us versus them at all. What surprises them is the sheer ordinariness of all of it. They expected to be constantly, daily aware of being an outsider. And instead, they describe within a year, mostly forgetting about it. Their kid's best friend is LDS, and it's a non-issue. Their favorite neighbor brought over soup when they were sick and never once asked about their beliefs. The thing they feared turned out to be a background detail, not a foreground reality. So here's what to do with that. Go in expecting people, not a monolith. The single biggest predictor of whether a transplant ends up happy here isn't which neighborhood they picked, though that does matter. It's whether they showed up assuming their neighbors were individuals or assuming they were a faceless religious bloc. The people who came in guarded looked for slights, and they found them. The people who come in open-minded, treating everyone as a person until proven otherwise, almost universally tell me that Utah is the friendliest place they've ever lived. And look, that's the same state, completely different experiences. The variable was the posture that they brought into it. And practically, that means say yes to the invitation, even when you assume it's not for you. Let your kids befriend whoever. Be a good neighbor before you've decided whether you'll be accepted. The warmth here is real, and it's not conditional on conversion. That's the part the internet gets mostly wrong. You will be invited to things. The church is genuinely not trying to ambush you at the block party. People are just being people. This is the strongest point because it reframes the entire question you walked in with. You came in asking the question, will I be an outsider in Utah? And the real answer, the one that surprises everyone, is only for about as long as you decide to be. The culture clash in the title of this video, for most people, handled well, it turns out to be more of a culture adjustment. Sharp for a few months, then it dissolves into ordinary life faster than they ever expected. The people who are miserable here are almost always the ones who chose the wrong Utah for their family, and they refuse to engage with their neighbors. Fix those two things, the right area and an open posture, and Utah goes from the thing you were most nervous about, to, honestly, one of the best places in the country to build a life. Mountains out your window, low crime, kids who can roam, and neighbors who'll show up for you. That's the reality almost no one expects and almost nobody finds. So let's bring it home. You came into this with one fear, that you'd move to Utah and feel like a permanent outsider. Here's everything we just walked through. Reality number one, the social layer is real but completely solvable if you build your community on purpose. Reality number two, the Sunday and alcohol logistics are week one friction that's getting milder every single year, not the dry theocracy that you were warned about. Reality number three, schools are secular and solid, and neighborhood choice does the heavy lifting for your kids. Reality number four, the big one, there are two Utahs, and you choose your culture when you choose your zip code. So choose it on purpose. And reality number five, the thing everyone fears turns out, for most people, to dissolve into ordinary life faster than they ever believed. And here's the honest emotional truth. I want you to sit with it. You probably came into this video expecting the answer to be some version of, yeah, it's going to be hard and a little bit lonely. And the real answer is so much better than that. Handled right, this is one of the most welcoming places that you could ever land. If you're looking to make the move to Utah or within the state of Utah, my team and I are here to be your real estate resource of choice. Make sure to reach out to us and start the conversation, and also subscribe to this channel to learn more about living in Utah, because I do videos like this every single week. And if you're looking to learn more about life in Utah, check out these videos next. And until the next one, thanks.